just can't be prophesy say. One must live 10 miles away. In the I'm on Sata on the mountain top, watching Babylon burning red hot, red hot. War in a Babylon, tribal war in a Babylon. Look at that, it's people out there. So what we do? Make we slide out there.
who I'll just read it out to you. Air defence, Navy and leadership is gone. They want to talk. I said too late, referring, of course, to Iran. It would be an overstatement to say that their leadership is gone, given how quickly the Iranians have managed to bring succession planning into place. And we understand, according to the Iranian Supreme, the Interim Leadership Council, that they will be announcing a new Ayatollah soon. But certainly the strikes are continuing from the IDF and Israel on Tehran. The IDF saying today that they had hit a leadership complex, also that they'd taken out two important intelligence chiefs in Tehran. Interestingly, we've had word from Russia's state-run atomic energy provider, Rosatom, who works together with the Iranians on their nuclear energy programs. And they've said that they're evacuating staff from the Bushehr nuclear power plant because there are audible strikes on military facilities very close to the plant. And they said they also have no contact at all, this is the CEO of Rosatom, with Iran's nuclear leadership. So he doesn't know what they are thinking. As for negotiations, I expect that we will be hearing from the leadership that still does put comments out on X about their response to what Donald Trump had to say. Certainly the Iranian ambassador to the United Nations has said this is not the time for negotiations, that we are very doubtful about the usefulness of negotiations, he said. I think it's also worth noting, you mentioned that strike on the girls' school in Minab in Iran on the first day, in which 165 were supposed to have been killed, 150 of them students. The UN Human Rights Office has called for an investigation into what exactly the circumstances of that were, saying that it could be a war crime. And certainly Israel and the United States have not been able to give clarity as to what may have happened there. So that seems to be an investigation that will take some time to work out. But certainly a terrible incident in the early hours, certainly not pinpoint bombing. America has said this is as the death toll in Tehran climbs, and also the death toll in Lebanon, of course, where Israel's offensive against Hezbollah is picking up pace.
Diana Magno there. Well, just in the last couple of moments, we're hearing from Ben Gurion Airport in Tel Aviv that Israeli airspace is to open gradually on Wednesday night. There must be a certain level of confidence about the safety of the skies over Israel, certainly from that news from Ben Gurion Airport that their airspace in Israel is to start gradually opening tomorrow evening. Well, Diana mentioned what's happening on the ground in Lebanon. Our international correspondent John Sparks is in Beirut with the latest.
We are in the centre of the city, outside the Grand Mosque in Martyrs Square. I can hear a drone buzzing above us. We presume that to be an Israeli drone. I can tell you that this part of the city is slowly turning into an urban campground, if you will. People who have been displaced from their homes in the southern suburbs of Beirut, particularly one suburb called Dahia, where the majority there are Shia Muslims, and that is where Hezbollah draws the majority of its support from the Shia community. There's people coming here for shelter, for protection, living out in the open. You can see people have stretched their blankets and carpets and things on the pavement here. They're sleeping out in the open. It's very cold here as well. So I think that is a sign that this military conflict here in Lebanon is turning into a humanitarian crisis as well. You know, the Israelis have been pounding targets in the southern suburbs of Beirut and in southern Lebanon as well, and their ambitions go beyond that. From the Israeli Defense Minister Israel Ghetts, he said this morning, "I have instructed the army to advance into southern Lebanon to take new strategic positions." And they already held strategic positions in southern Lebanon. They have done for the last 15 months. They're going to go further. Hezbollah, they have responded. They say that they released a swarm of drones towards an Israeli airbase at 6:30 in the morning. That's just one of several strikes that they have made. And they put out a statement, and I think this is significant this morning. they said that they were prepared to put an end to the aggression, Israeli aggression, by all available means. So you've got a conflict here that's turning into something much more serious, and I think that's going to worry a whole lot of people, including the Lebanese government. They have lost control of this situation. The Prime Minister of this country, who is a Sunni Muslim, he has banned Hezbollah, its military and security functions. He has banned them. He has told them to stick to their political activities. Hezbollah clearly not listening to him. That puts the government of Lebanon in a crisis. It's one of the unintended consequences. Where does Lebanon go from here? I'm not sure. Certainly the Lebanese army, which is under the control of the Lebanese government, they do not seem prepared to confront Hezbollah. You'd be looking at something like civil war. So it's a very difficult situation here, and I think it's going to get worse.
Well, it's difficult contrasting that difficult and escalating situation in Lebanon with a couple of bits of breaking news we had in the last few moments. One is that the Ben Gurion airport in Tel Aviv is going to reopen on Wednesday. We're hearing only one passenger aircraft will be allowed entry during
remarkable was, given his past comments, he heaped praise on NATO, on Mark Rutte, on the Germans, on the French, and he said, we used to have the strongest of strongest alliances with Britain, but now we have better relationships with Europe. And you just think, just 6 months ago, Keir Starmer was bigging himself up as a sort of Trump whisperer, that bridge between the EU and NATO and the new administration in the White House. It was always going to be an unlikely bromance. The Mr. Rule Starmer, a sort of left-leaning Labour leader, versus Mr. No Rules, Donald Trump of the right. It was always going to be it was an odd coupling, so to speak, but it does feel to me like the odd coupling has really hit a bit of a wall.
Now by our US colleague, so Mark, we'll talk about that odd coupling in a short while, but perhaps where Starmer used to be a bridge between the EU and America, the EU is coming to Trump straight direct today, aren't they, this afternoon? He's got another meeting with Friedrich Merz.
Yeah, it's hard to know where to start with all of this, but let's start with Friedrich Merz, the German Chancellor, who's here in Washington, a trip that was planned before the weekend's events a trip that is going ahead. He'll be here at the White House shortly. Look, just listening to what Harry was saying there, it's fascinating and confusing because the German position on what's happening in Iran is the same as the British position. They do not believe, frankly, that it is legal what the Americans are doing. German military involvement is not being considered at this moment. The difference from Trump's perspective is that there are bases in the UK that he needed access to and he wasn't granted access to them. And I think we've got a sense now, as the dust begins to settle on all this, and we hear from different officials within the American administration, we get a sense of why the Europeans, Britain, Keir Starmer, the French, Emmanuel Macron, and the Germans, as well as others as well, the Spanish are on side as well. It's not as if Britain's going out alone. We get a sense of why they are so reluctant, or were so reluctant to get involved in that initial action. I want you to listen to Marco Rubio, Secretary of State and also National Security Advisor, speaking late yesterday, where he was trying to articulate why he thought the action that America has taken was a response to an imminent threat by Iran. And that's really important because that's how what lawyers weigh up. Government lawyers will be working out whether or not the threat is imminent. And if it is, then that could justify, under international law, military action. If they do not believe it's imminent, then it doesn't amount to, then it's not in accordance with international law. Have a listen to Marco Rubio, and then we'll speak after.
We knew that there was going to be an Israeli action. We knew that that would precipitate an attack against American forces. And we knew that if we didn't preemptively go after them before they launched those attacks, we would suffer higher casualties and perhaps see those killed. And they would all be here answering questions about why we knew that and didn't act.
So Marco Rubio there is saying that the only reason the Americans is because they knew the and that would precipitate, would damage and threaten American interest. The imminence to Marco Rubio based on a pre-attack by the Israelis. He appears to be suggesting that American foreign policy is being dictated by Israeli foreign policy, which is remarkable. And remember, when the Israelis attacked Iran last summer, the British Attorney General concluded that that attack was not legal, which is why the Brits did not help the Israelis when they attacked last summer, and they only began to help when it became a defensive operation, and we're seeing a repeat of that now. Now I want you to listen to Mark Warner. He is the Vice Chair of the Intelligence Committee. He's a Democrat, so he's not a on the intelligence. He's what's known as part of the Gang of Eight. So in the run to the weekend, he saw the intelligence none of us have seen. And here's his take about whether the threat from Iran was imminent.
There was no imminent threat to the United States of America by the Iranians. There was a threat to Israel. If we equate a threat to Israel is the equivalent of an imminent threat to the United States, then we are in uncharted territory.
Meanwhile, Mark, the diplomatic spat, I suppose you could call it, between the US and the UK continuing in terms of the comments that Donald Trump has made to a whole series of British media outlets, including the latest to The Sun, about the UK and their stance as the attacks first started.
Yeah, I mean, we were saying throughout yesterday.
Could build another way with 44. My work moves fast. My tasks, priorities, and deadlines.
Comms team, the press secretary Caroline Levitt. This is him just talking to whoever manages to get hold of him, and he's spoken to a whole range of American reporters when slightly different versions of the justification for this war. Look, I've spoken to sources within the British Embassy who are saying that the special relationship has many different strands, and yes, in one sense it is very strained right now, and that is to do with Iran, but there are more aspects. The diplomatic is one, but there's an economic aspect to the special relationship. Honestly, that's pretty positive spin going on what is a very, very difficult situation now between the UK and the American government and Donald Trump.
OK, Mark, thanks very much. Taking you from Mark to live images that we have from the helicopter, from the skycopter over Portsmouth. And this is the HMS and the HMS Dragon. These are two Type 45 destroyers that we believe from the UK Cyprus to help defend from attacks. daring class. They're guided missile destroyers built for the Royal Navy, primarily designed as anti-aircraft, anti-missile warfare. And of course, we know that RAF Akrotiri, the base in Cyprus, has been targeted by a number of drones over the last couple of days. There was damage to the airfield. 2 more drones got in yesterday. This is the vessel that it seems that the Ministry of Defence think could potentially help, HMS Duncan. That's judging by what we saw on the hull there. HMS Duncan should be nearby also. How long it'll take them to get from there to Cyprus, we don't know. It's going to take a while, though, isn't it? And these are Type 45 destroyers. These are the images that we have of these vessels today. We thought they might have been en route already or potentially in the Med, but they are still at the dockside in Portsmouth, as you can see at the time. It's from the government of the United Arab Emirates have addressed the regional escalation media briefing, confirming that air defence systems have successfully neutralised the vast majority of threats from a recent Iranian attack. Correspondent Sally Lockwood has the latest.
A government briefing has just concluded here in Abu Dhabi, where they gave us an update on the situation in the country on day 4 of this war. When it comes to numbers, they confirmed that more than 1,000 missiles and drones have now been fired. The UAE war started on Saturday, and of those, 57 drones and 1 missile have made it through. They gave us a look at some of the intercepted projectiles that have been fired at the country, but I think what's causing concern is that so many of the drones have made it through. And asking about defences here, does the UAE stand with an unlimited supply of and what could be unlimited supply of Iranian drones? And the message is that we have enough air defences to stand this for months. The message today. Military intervention. There was no word in terms of getting involved militarily. I mean, they did say there would be response and that there would be repercussions, an act of war. I've spoken to an official source and asked about the Gulf countries and now asking Donald Trump to de-escalate when it comes to this war, given what's happened to them in the last 4 days, that these peaceful nations have had war break out, essentially, in environments that could not have imagined it just a few days ago. And this source said, absolutely not. That is not the position of Gulf. They are not America to de-escalate. In fact, it's exactly the opposite. Their position is simply, you have our support, finish the job. And when I asked if they were going to get involved militarily, they would be drawn on that.
You're watching News. With our breaking news this hour. The United States and Israel have launched airstrikes across Iran. President Trump says the US and Israel have launched what he called major operations. Mr. Trump says the objective is to defend the American people by eliminating imminent threats from the Iranian regime. He says Iran can never have a nuclear weapon, and he accuses the Republic of trying to rebuild its nuclear program. The president also said there may be American casualties as a result of this operation, which has been dubbed Epic Fury by the Pentagon. The retaliation has started from Iran. Bahrain says the US base there has come under attack. Qatar, Kuwait, Jordan, Iraq, Saudi Arabia have also had missiles fired into their countries, getting reports of one person killed in the Arab Emirates and 4 people in Syria from missile debris. In a video statement, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said the attack is to remove an existential threat to his country. We've been hearing air explosions. Israel's defense has declared a special and permanent note. They've closed the airspace. All schools are shut. As to home sites have also been shut today. Israeli Defense Forces say of missiles being fired into the country. 70,000 reservists have been called up. Meanwhile, in Iran, the strikes are across multiple locations. Media reports say blasts have been heard in Esfahan, Karaj, Kemar, Rom, and the port city Bushehr. Mehrabad, Iran. Scale bomb Iran as reported 40 people have been killed at a secondary school in the south of the country. An official Reuters agency said Tehran's retaliation and response will be
The poor information being from these two regimes in Tehran and other cities will continue. Therefore, as much as possible, while maintaining calm, to other cities to stay on the evils of these two regimes.
In January, when widespread street protests swept the country, President Trump promised help was on its way before taking no immediate action. In today's speech, he said help had finally arrived.
When we are finished with your government, it will be your. This will be probably your only chance for generations. For many years, you have for America's help. You never got it. No president was willing to do what I'm willing to do tonight. Now you have a president who is giving what you want. So let's see how.
Israeli sources that the Ayatollah is dead. This is breaking news again. Israeli sources that the Ayatollah, the supreme leader of Iran, is dead. Again, to Jeremy Diamond. Jeremy, the strikes this morning, parting the leadership. That's what we knew. Party there in Iran. We can say from sources, Ayatollah of Iran, the supreme leader, is dead. What more are you learning there in Israel?
That's right, Jessica. Two Israeli sources telling me and my colleague Tal Shalev that Israel has confirmed that the supreme leader of Iran, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, has been killed as a result of Israeli strikes that took place earlier today. One of these sources saying that actually has photographic evidence of Khamenei, his dead body. The second story that an announcement is in the works, although it is possible that the Israelis will allow President Trump and the United States to make this announcement officially. But this is enormous breaking news here that the Israeli government is confirming that the supreme leader of Iran was killed in Israeli strikes earlier today. This is a day that many Israeli government officials have hoped would come eventually. It is also, we should note, a day that many Iranian dissidents, Iranian protesters had hoped would eventually come. And indeed, it has come now. And it is an earth-shattering moment for the Middle East and for the future of Iran. We should note, however, that the supreme leader's death is not necessarily indicative of the Iran regime collapsing altogether. This regime is not based off of one person alone. It is a system that is multi-layered. And we know that the supreme leader understood very well that he could potentially be targeted for assassination should the United States and Israel choose to carry out massive strikes on Iran as they did today. And in recent weeks, months, he had been preparing should that actually take place. Now, we are still waiting, of course, for any confirmation from the United States as well as to the supreme leader having been killed. But two Israeli sources familiar with the matter telling us now the supreme leader was killed strikes today. One last note on this is that we have also been hearing about the division of labor between the United States and Israel as it pertains to these strikes. U.S. officials have been very clear that their strikes have been focused on military targets and that the targeting senior Iranian leaders, such as the supreme leader, were being conducted by Israel and not by the United States. Ultimately, that may well be a difference given the high level of coordination between the United States and Israel hanging out these strikes. Enormous moment in the Middle East. Now, it could potentially be a target of any Israeli-U.S. strikes on Iran, and indeed now not only a target confirmed by Israeli sources that the supreme leader of Iran is dead.
Indeed, big news out of the Middle East, the potential to reshape so many dynamics there. But again, as Jeremy notes, not a straight line to regime change. This is a piece of it, but it is a big piece of it. This is enormous news. Jeremy, I want you to stand by because we have seen those missiles that have been coming to Israel throughout the day. So with us, I do want to bring Jim Sciutto back in. Jim, this is very big news. And again, Jeremy, it is, and so help people understand, contextualize for them that what this means, that Iran's supreme leader has been these strikes by the U.S. and Israel.
These strikes are now officially decapitation strikes, right? Strikes that were intended via Israeli military action, to be clear, to take out Iran's most senior leadership. And the man you see there, Ali Khamenei, is Iran's most senior leader with enormous, certainly political power in that country, but also religious authority in that country. The structure of Iranian government being that, yes, it has a president elected, but the supreme leader lies at the top of the government. And as that man you see speaking there, which Israeli sources are now telling CNN, was killed in these strikes. Again, to my point earlier, Jessica, prior to this morning, there's been an enormous amount of speculation as to how far, one, the U.S. was willing to go as well if they were striking together. And now we know they were willing to go as far as taking out Iran's most senior leader. Now, we report earlier that he was not the only target of these strikes, that other senior military and other leaders in Iran were targeted. We don't know their status at this point, but as we reported earlier in the day, Israeli officials were becoming more confident over time today that they had hit at least some of their targets. Listen, in Iran, does that mean that suddenly there will be a new government, a new leader, one friendlier to the U.S.? No. An enormous network and structure of leadership and power remains in that country, military, economic, political, and otherwise. But to talk the supreme leader is a significant change. And of course, the question is, how far does that change go? Does it weaken the government to the degree that the government collapses? Does it weaken it to a degree that the protesters that we saw take on this government quite bravely in recent weeks are inspired to go out into the streets again, right? I mean, that's what President Trump was encouraging them to do explicitly in it this morning. Now, that's quite a risky proposition, given that that government retains enormous power, and they showed they were willing to use it to deadly extent in the many thousands of protesters they killed in recent weeks. Those are still the open questions, but we have one question answered. Was Israel willing to go so far as to take out the supreme leader of Iran? And the answer is yes, and they success doing so.
Right, and now the big question is what comes next? Jim Sciutto, stand by. I want to...
I first came across Ansarada in 2014. It was a corporate finance deal we were working on for a solar developer in the UK. A colleague asked the lawyer we were dealing with to provide who he preferred working with.
And Barak Ravizi, a political affairs analyst. He's also a global affairs correspondent at Access. Barak, I know you spoke with President Trump earlier today. Breaking news is that Iran's supreme leader has been killed in these strikes. That is coming from Israeli sources. Barak, we're still waiting to hear from the president, from the U.S. government, but the Israeli sources confirming that. What more are you learning? What did the president tell you?
So first, just about Khamenei, I think around 30, 40 minutes ago, the Israeli ambassador to Washington, Yechiel Leiter, updated several U.S. officials and members of Congress that Israeli intelligence shows that Khamenei has been killed and his body was taken out of the rubble in the compound in Tehran that was attacked. I spoke to President Trump a little bit before 1 p.m. While he was in Mar-a-Lago. We spoke for around 5 minutes. The president sounded me at least pretty calm and confident that things are going according to plan. I think the situation with Khamenei was one of the main things he was tracking at that moment. And what was interesting in what he told me is that I asked him, how long is this going to continue? And he said, I have several ramps. I can go long and take the whole thing, meaning take over Iran, something that, I don't think that's something that is seriously being considered.
That's quite a statement, yeah.
Yeah. Or I can go on for another 2 or 3 days and then tell the Iranians, we'll see you again in a few years if you try and rebuild your nuclear program, your missile. Meaning that Donald Trump, at least my impression from the conversation with him, is that he's looking to end this thing within a few days and basically put an ultimatum. To the Iranians, we can get a deal, or you can try and rebuild your program, and then we'll just bomb you again if you try to do this. And I think that was one of the messages that U.S. officials that just briefed reporters, I think 10 minutes ago, said that when the 12-day war ended after Operation Midnight Hammer, the U.S. told Iran, if you try to rebuild, we will come again. And those U.S. officials said that the Iranians, according to U.S. intelligence, did try and rebuild the program. So we know from light imagery that the Iranians started infrastructure work in several nuclear sites that were attacked in June. We do not know whether they really tried to resume a nuclear program, meaning enrichment and other activities. One of the interesting things I heard from President Trump is that he told me that he thinks that Operation Midnight Hammer allowed Operation Epic Fury to go forward. Because President Trump claimed that if he did not go on that operation last June, if he did not order a strike on those 3 nuclear facilities, Iran would have been much, much closer to a nuclear weapon, maybe even have a nuclear weapon by now, according to what President Trump said. And that would make the current operation much harder, maybe even impossible.
Mr. Clark Samuel, you may remain seated. On the 8th of December 2025, at the plea and preparation hearing in this case, you pleaded guilty to dangerous driving and to causing death by dangerous driving. Those two matters on the indictment, counts 1 and 2, cover episodes of your driving the evening of the 18th of October 2005 between 11 p.m. and 11:30 p.m. when you drove from central London to Roding Lane south in Redbridge, and secondly when on Redbridge Lane you hit and killed Ewan Tamang as he was crossing the road. Counts 3 and 4 of the same indictment allege that at the time of causing the death of Ewan Tamang, you were driving whilst over the prescribed limit for alcohol, and lastly, after causing his death, you embarked on a further episode taking away from the scene of the fatality to your home. On your behalf, a written basis of plea was provided. That document, the 8th of December 2000. In that document, you set out that your guilty pleas to counts 1 and 2. The basis that you drank 3 glasses of brandy and coke. When you went to drive home, you called a Mercedes A-Class, who you say looked suspicious and who you thought may be to car. The basis speaks of an incident some years ago when you had been approached at gunpoint and your vehicle taken. You said that on the 18th of October 2025, you believed you were under threat and were being followed, and this led to your erratic and dangerous driving. It is also led to a sudden increase in speed before the collision, the subject of count 2. You then wanted to get home as quickly as possible, and you thought you were still under threat. Once home, you said you consumed 6 to 7 shots of Chirok vodka mixed with ginger beer and had a cannabis cookie. You say you then dozed off before being woken by the police. At the police station, you say you told a representative that you had drunk vodka in the hour or two before your arrest, had consumed a cannabis cookie and signed a written document to that effect at the police station. You do not understand why police records show something different. You accepted that you may well have been over the drink-drive limit when you got into your car from that restaurant, but if so, it would not have been by much. At that stage, a timetable was set for matters in that basis to be considered, along with further consideration of the evidence in support of counts 3 and 4. Having given time for inquiries to be made by your solicitors and by the Crown Prosecution Service to consider the accounts set out in that written basis of plea, I note that no vehicle can be seen on any available CCTV to follow your car. You said you had been at the O lounge and that at no point can any car be seen to follow you as you have suggested. On your behalf today, it is that you maintain that you believed you felt a threat, albeit it is accepted there is no independent evidence of that, and no evidence has been called on that issue on your behalf. Whilst I can accept what happened in 2017, having viewed the footage that has been collated, I do not find your belief to be one that mitigates this driving or the seriousness of it. Separately, I noted evidence of the state of your car following the collision, which shows significant damage to the windscreen. An addendum-based plea document was provided on the 2nd month. In that document, you accept at the time of the collision with Ewan Tamang, your blood alcohol reading was 45 micrograms of alcohol per 100 millilitres of breath. The legal limit is 35 micrograms, and so you accept being over the limit for driving and by a significant margin. As you now accept the alcohol level, and also that you failed to stop after the collision, it is not necessary for there to trial on counts 3 and 4, and so those counts will lie on the file, on the court file, with the usual direction not to be proceeded with without either this court or the Court of Appeal. Turning then to the events of Saturday, the 18th of October. In the early evening, you went into central London from your home in Woodford. You were driving your BMW M5, a high-performance vehicle. It took about an hour, and you arrived in Bloomsbury area just after 8:30 p.m. As you were later to accept, whilst in London, you consumed alcohol before then driving home. Your return journey started about 11 p.m. Much of that journey captured on CCTV. A chef, Nico Segara, was riding his motorcycle along Good Street. As you drove past him, your car brushed his leg, causing him to stop and to put his foot to the ground. You did not stop. You drove on and drove through a red traffic light. When lights changed to green, the motorcyclist followed your vehicle. When he did so, he observed you drive through two further sets of traffic lights. You turn left into Gower Street and then right into Torrent Place, again passing through a red traffic light. You then continued along Bin Place into Gore Square, passing through yet another red light. As you drove into Tavistock Square, there was slow and stationary traffic. You then drive onto the pavement outside the Tavistock Hotel, past the station, into a red traffic light. You then drive through yet another set of traffic lights at red and collide with a Mercedes car. You continue with Tavistock Place, stopped momentarily before then driving away. The motorcyclist, Mr. Segara, stopped to speak to the driver of Mr. Ansari. He checked he was uninjured and then continued to follow your car. When you stopped at a red light, he took a photograph of the registration plate of your vehicle. Mr. Ansari was driving his car as a taxi that night and had a passenger. He was driving towards home. He recalled travelling slowly in Tavistock Square at a junction with Gore Square. He saw you on the traffic light. You tried to cross the road in front of Mr. Ansari, but stopped. Mr. Ansari continued to drive forward. As he passed, you drove on and collided with the back of his car on the driver's side, close to the rear wheel, before then driving away at speed. Mr. Ansari called the police units past that evening. He later took a video of the damage you had caused to his car. After this collision, you continued in the direction of your home in Woodford. And the of your mobile phone shows that you made 5 voice calls to the number in that period. The calls are of various duration, up to 1 minute and 21 seconds. CCTV footage captures you driving, often at speed, between 11:21 and 11:27 p.m. At 11:21, you're on the Balls Point on the wrong side of that road before turning left, continuing on Dawson Lane. A minute later, you drove around 2 cars travelling along Dawson Lane by moving onto the wrong side of the road. You passed 4 cyclists travelling in the opposite direction in that lane, causing 2 of those cyclists to swerve in order to avoid a collision. At 11:23, you overtook another car by moving onto the wrong side of the road. Later, as you were on Graham Road, you moved again onto the wrong side of the road and drove through yet another set of traffic lights at red. At 11:24 p.m, you accelerated around a lorry travelling along Morning Lane. Further along Morning Lane, at its junction Bonsford Street, a car stopped at a red traffic light. You crossed yet again onto the wrong side of the road. At 11:25, still driving along Morning Lane, you crossed the junction at Wells Street and moved onto the exit lane, narrowly missing a car travelling in the opposite direction. By 11:30 p.m, CCTV CCTV shows you driving along Roding Lane South towards Redbridge Lane East. Redbridge Lane East runs between the North Circular Road at Redbridge and the A1400 Avenue. The road is in a residential area. It is a road with a single lane for traffic in each direction. The speed limit, 30 miles an hour. At the time of the incident, it was dark, the road lit by streetlights on both sides. The road surface was dry. Yubin Tamang, a 20-year-old man from Nepal, a university student living in Burkhold Avenue, near to where he was killed, was walking along the pavement of Redbridge Lane East. He looked, checked the road was clear, before crossing the road. As he was crossing that road, he was hit by your car. You were driving at a speed significantly in excess of the speed limit. Yubin was catapulted into the air before crashing onto the road. He sustained catastrophic injuries. Camera footage shows the lead up to the impact and the point of impact itself. On the audio, the noise of the engine of your car can clearly be heard as it approached at speed. After your rear brake lights can be seen, but you then drive on, leaving the scene without stopping. The footage of the impact shown in this court is simply shocking. Images of the state of your car show that it was then not in a fit state to be driven safely, but nonetheless you continue for another 8 miles over some 15 minutes or so to a location close to your home in Kings Avenue. You make another phone call just after the collision to the same number as those earlier calls, this one for 33 seconds. Of note, there is no call to the emergency services. It is also of note that you do not park outside your home, but a short distance away. You've been in the car on your own. The windscreen of the car had been shattered. I mentioned earlier the journey into central London was an hour. The journey home took half that time. After getting home, you're seen running and returning to the car half an hour later for some reason. Expert analysis of the event data recorder from your BMW shows that in the 5 seconds before the collision, the speed of your car went from 36 to 74 miles an hour, 67 miles an hour at the point of impact. And so at that point of impact with Yubin's body, you were driving at a speed more than double the speed limit then in force. Although you had left the scene where Yubin had been hit, other drivers stopped, attended to him, and sought to administer first aid. They called 999 and sought to give CPR. The helicopter emergency medical services team arrived and attended to him. He was taken to the Royal London Hospital. It was clear he had sustained extensive and catastrophic injuries, multiple fractures, organ damage, including damage to the brain. He was placed in the intensive care unit, but remained unresponsive, and his injuries were deemed to be unsurvivable. During the course of the 19th of October, his condition deteriorated, and he died just after 1 p.m. on the 20th of October. Turning next to victim impact, there are a number of victim impact statements. One is from Yubin's close friend, roommate, university classmate, Shushan Gada. He speaks about the impact on him, loss of his close friend, and the impact on his own education, relationships, and family. He says that he was my family. Quote, he was only 20 years of age. He had dreams, ambition, and plans. His loss has not only taken a life, but has permeated mine and my family's lives. The emotional, psychological, and practical impact continues every day. There is also a statement from Attar Sharif, who has supported the family since the death of Yubin. Yubin's mother and father have called from Nepal, and his mother read her moving statement to the court this morning. Part of her written statement reads as follows. This incident has not only taken our side, but let us eat. We feel extreme pain and an unimpulse. We have felt that we have. My son of further Asian, UK. He wants to gain leave from here because it is well recognised in the world. Unfortunately, this tragic event happened near after he was returning home from work. No sentence a court can ever equate to loss. The life of a young man mourned by those who knew and loved him and so ahead of him. Returning to the facts, the police arrived at your home address just before 4:30 a.m. on the Sunday. On arrest and caution, you made no reply responses. You asked police what car you were meant to be driving, but at that stage, the police did not say anything, just that you would be interviewed. You were told your house would be searched, and when you asked why, police said looking for a car key. You spoke to your partner about what you called the BMW key. When the police asked you for the BMW key, you made no reply. Your mobile telephone was seized. When police searched your home, they found various documents for the BMW, including a notice of intended prosecution, the logbook and keys. At the police station, the drink and drive procedure was completed. You were asked when you had last consumed alcohol. You said at 9 o'clock, a Hennessy and Coke. From the documentation completed at the time of the process, you said nothing about any post-incident consumption of drink or drugs. The breath test procedure gave a lower reading of 45 micrograms of alcohol per 100 millilitres of breath, so the limit being 35. A drug swipe test showed a positive reading for cancer. Later analysis shows some impairment at the time of driving, and obviously with both drink and drugs, the impact of those drugs may have been on you. When interviewed under caution, you made no comment responses to all questions. It is of note that when asked to explain why you had driven in a dangerous manner and whether there had been any distractions, you made no comment responses. In the initial basis of plea document, you set out the consumption of post-incident alcohol, as is clear from a reading of the joint report of the experts instructed by the prosecution and on your behalf. None of the accounts you've given could account for the measured alcohol, and all indicate you must have consumed more alcohol than you have declared. And from the calculation alone, it is not to say whether missing alcohol was consumed pre-incident, post-incident, or a combination of the two. As I have set out in your addendum basis plea, you now accept a reading of a minimum of 45 micrograms of alcohol per 100 millilitres of breath at the time of fatal collision. Turning next to your driving record and antecedents, you are now 41. There are a number of convictions recorded against you. They go back to 2000, when age 16, you case in 2001 for a number of driving offences committed in the September, October, November and December 2000. Those offences including aggravated vehicle taking, dangerous driving, taking a vehicle without consent, driving other than in accordance with a driving licence, and driving without insurance. You received a detention and training order. In April 2002, for further driving offences, as well as burglary, you were subject of a further detention and training order. 2004 and 2005 for offence of driving whilst qualified and driving whilst uninsured. You were initially made subject to a committee order and the subject sentence order. that suspended sentence in 2006 and 2007. In 2010, for further offence, driving whilst disqualified and driving without insurance. That led to a community order and a further period of disqualification from driving. As is clear from the dates, all of those driving convictions are at least some 15 years ago, the most recent when you were 25. Turning next to the sentencing guidelines, the maximum sentence for dangerous driving is one of 2 years imprisonment. The maximum sentence for causing death by dangerous driving is one of life imprisonment. Within the relevant sentencing guidelines for death by dangerous driving, in terms of culpability, this was a prolonged, persistent and deliberate cause of dangerous driving. Your driving was impaired by the consumption of alcohol, and in the period immediately before, you were driving at a speed significantly in excess of the speed limit. In my judgment, this comes within category A for categorisation is accepted. Whilst there are 2 counts on the indictment, I'm happy with regards to your overall driving and your overall conduct. For an offence within category A, the start point sentence is one of 12 years custody, the range 8 to 18 years custody. For the episode of dangerous driving before the fatal incident, your driving involves a series of deliberate decisions to flout the normal driving rules and a deliberate disregard for the safety of other road users. You brush the motorist. You drive through numerous sets of traffic lights at red. You overtook other road users. You were on the wrong side of the road. Cause us to take evasive action. The footage shown at the hearing shows a quite appalling distance up to the incident that leads to death. On for dangerous driving, the fact side placed this offence into the highest category. As such, the start point on count 1 would be one of 18 months imprisonment and a range of sentence of between 1 and 2 years. Next, moving to the previous convictions for driving offences. Whilst they are some years ago, they cannot be ignored. On count 1, a motorcyclist and the pedal cyclist have to swerve to avoid you. You fail to stop having hit Ansari's car, and you may not have also made contact with Mr. Zara. In relation to both counts, you were driving having consumed alcohol in excess of the legal limit. With count 2, causing death by dangerous driving, you failed to stop at the scene of a fatal crash, and whilst in your initial basis of plea, you have sought to suggest a reason for driving, as you did through fear or threat from others. I reject that feature of the matters put forward. I propose to impose concurrent sentences on the 2 counts here, and so there will need to be some upward adjustment to the notional sentence on count 2 to reflect the overall driving conduct. In terms of factors to reduce seriousness, reflect as mitigation, I note your expressions of remorse. I have no doubt that the regret and remorse you have now expressed is entirely genuine. There are moving letters from many who know you and the many good things that you have done. Your partner and the mother of your 2 children about the difficult start you had and how you have turned that around for good, and the ways in which you have supported many others, giving talks in prison to motivate young men, and in your support for the homeless through your work in the music industry. Your mother speaks of the changes she has seen in you from your teenage years to you being a father yourself of your own children and your support of the wider family. Others, Jacan Prince, Kyra Miller, Nathan Clark, speak of your role as a mentor or guide to them, giving encouragement, support and motivation to them in their music. Laverne Cole speaks of the work you've done with the St. Christopher's Fellowship, and Cherie Jackson, parent director of the Akim Community Mime and Dance Group, sets up the physical and financial support you provided to that non-profit community group over a number of years. Timothy Bifo speaks of the support and encouragement you have given to him. Your music has provided you with the following and with significant financial reward, and I acknowledge that you have used both the music and the money it has given you to good effect and have done much to support many others. I've read very carefully the letter that you have written to me, in that you express your genuine regret and remorse for your actions on the October 2025. As you set out, you've done much to help others over the last 10 years, and all that goodwill is marked by driving in drink and taking the life of another young man. Guilty and judged in the 25% is appropriate and will be given for those pleaded guilty, as well as a disqualification until an extended test is passed. There has to be a disqualification from driving and for a minimum period of 5 years. Turning next to litigation, on your behalf, I have seen and read a sentencing note that has been prepared on your behalf. It is accepted that this is a Category A1 case, and with aggravating features that may have a starting point for sentence in double figures. It is submitted that the court may be able to reduce that sentence to within the single figure range. Through Mr. Aina, a full apology has been made and a full acceptance of the sequence of events in the course of your driving that evening that are clear aggravating features of the driving. As I have already said, quite appalling litany of events. Mr. Aina also expresses your apology to the many others that you have let down. Your letter and those of the many who have written about you are ones that I have read and digested. Laverne Cole gave evidence in the course of his hearing to further highlight the work that I've done to assist those the St. Christopher's Fellowship supports with issues around the impact of their own offending behaviour. Those you met valued what you said about your own experience. In a letter to me, you said as follows: the dedication it took to establish myself professionally has not only shaped my character, but has also strengthened my ability to reach out and positive. The career I have, my commitment to self-improvement, but also my desire to make a constructive and lasting contribution to my community. I am committed to being a positive member of society and will continue to do my part in trying to create positive outcomes for young people in my community. Mr. Aina has highlighted some parts of the character letters that I have referred to. As I've said, it is very clear that you have done much to support others. But as I've also indicated, it is a real shame that all of that work has been impacted by your dangerous and ultimately fatal actions last October. Would you stand, please? On count 2, what's causing by dangerous driving, applying guide out and making allowance for the aggravating and mitigating features identified. The sentence before plea would have been one of 16 years imprisonment. In my judgment, the aggravating features set out would take the sentence to the top of the identified range of sentence before the mitigating features identified, then bring it down to the sentence that I've just indicated. Making allowance for your plea of guilty, a sentence of 12 years imprisonment. On count one, dangerous driving, a concurrent sentence of 15 months. Again, before plea on count one, there would have been a sentence of 20 months. Taking account to your plea, your licence will be with the particulars of the conviction of dangerous driving and causing death by dangerous driving. There will be an order for disqualification and passing standard driving test. In terms of disqualification from driving, the minimum period is 5 years. And here, in light of the facts and your previous driving record, a disqualification for 9 years. In light of the custodial period that I have imposed, there must be an extension period to that period of disqualification. And that has to be 2/3 of the custodial term I impose, as the custodial period is one of over 7 years. The extension period is one of 8 years. So there will be a disqualification from driving period of 9 years and then an extension period of 8 years, making a total period of 10 years. On that sentence of 12 years, you will serve 2/3 of that term and then be released on licence for the remainder of it. Whilst on licence, you must comply with the terms of that sentence. At any stage, the licence may be revoked and your return has to be ordered. There will be an order that you pay the prosecution cost in the sum of £1,630. That sum to be paid within a month of today's date. If the statutory surcharge applies, the appropriate order may be drawn up. You may go down.
That's the magic. I've turned the...
By no means least, low.
Well, Chairman, thank you very much. I mean, you've been very active today, so I think I've still got a bit to ask. Well, I can't tell you what a pleasure it is to hear the write-up that you were given by Yvonne and Son in our briefing, and to hear you all appear to be so well over your brief. I'm tempted to say we should put you in back with most of the other public sector departments and shake you up and hope a bit of you rubs off on them, having sat around this table and listened to very different stories of less success than you appear to have achieved. I was interested, you went live 25, and have you had any hiccups or issues since then?
Will you start and I'll come in?
Yeah, we've had a few small issues, is what I'd say. We've still met all of our SLAs, so the 99.99% of the time system. Any new form system, there's been some challenges. Like I said, they're doing very kind of small and segment has continued throughout the majority of that time as well. So actually, we've learned a lot from the system going live. Any little event that we do have, we do kind of instant reviews on the back of, and we learn from again. So, but yeah, there has been a few interruptions, should we say? Yeah. Nothing fundamental, and we've still hit the main primary SLA that we need to.
And the SLA is for a very high degree of availability. Victoria will probably be able to remind me, but something like 99.9. Yeah. But we've had a few. There have been some instances. The good thing is we've always been able to learn from those and establish the root cause. I mean, my vantage point on this is that I'm chair of the RTGS Chaps Board, which is oversees the operation of RTGS and Chaps. I mentioned earlier we bought Chaps in-house at the end of 2017, just after I started, and at that point I've said the bank likes governance, so we made the governance more senior. So I run a board with, I think, 5 non-execs on it, all have a background in payments, and so the committee that has to explain to them when things have gone wrong, they will get an incident report if there's an incident. So I have I'm on the hook day to day from chairing that, and also, it so happens that Andrew, the governor, has a real background in the operations. So even if it's just a minor thing, he'll always want to know about it. I think the other thing I'd say is we've also had to deliver a lot of change over that period. So back to this evergreening, we've had to introduce all these upgrades during that period. Also, we had to deal with a backlog of defects that we decided we could postpone until we'd gone live. They weren't critical. That came out of that testing process that we talked about in the context of TS3 and TS4. So, I mean, you could I'm very pleased to be responsible and to be on the hook for our payment operations, but it does mean that you're only as good as how you've been that day.
The implementation's been pretty successful, a few bits and pieces.
Yeah.
So I was interested in the support, because in my experience of writing the kind of software you need to do this, it's not just implementation. So I see you've got there's 125 people still on the project. I think you've got 32, Accenture have got 84, looking at this PA Consulting 5 and contractors 4. So part of it is implementation. Are you confident that you've got the actual structuring of the support right? Because in my experience, when you get involved in writing bespoke software, particularly with people like Accenture, are not careful, you end up running up a very big downstream bill. So my question is, have you got that covered off as far as the taxpayer is concerned?
I think we have. I mean, it has contributed to why, and this is rightly you'd expect the NAO to point out that the running costs have gone up, because I mean it was a key part of the contract with Accenture that they would pass everything back to us to run. So we are not contracting out. And in fact, I think we're very close to Accenture's last person. Friday was the last involvement of Accenture. So as part of our increased running costs, we've had all the knowledge transfer from them back
to your staff.
To our staff. And that comes back to what I was saying to a comment from Mr. Osborne about we have had to change not just the RTGS target operating model, but the way the bank is staffed. We have to have these technology experts who can come, and they can, when we have one of these little, usually it's silent running, but when we have one of these and they're just dealing with the change, we'll have one of these instances, we'll get to the work from the code, why it happened, we can fix it, and we can who pays the RTGS and CHAPS levy. It's the same people paying it now as paying it before. We changed, as the report points out, the fee structure to allow for those who are very significant users relative to those who aren't. Everyone, though, is having to pay for the renewal of the system on a 20-year payback. We decided, that we thought that was reasonable given how much a leap forward this is. We thought it was reasonable to claw that back over 2 years. Obviously, this is increase access to the system, and that goes back to the 5 key priorities in the blueprint. We're going to have more and more interesting people who are using. So, our first omnibus account finality, we got more and more non-bank payment system providers. But of course, they will then pass it on to them. I'm not sure how it works with your analogy.
Charging is transparent.
Charging is transparent.
Charging, and then everybody knows what they're dealing with, and then people can see what the frictional costs of making a transfer are. Because if we're trying to help British industry or British commerce or British generally, we want a system that is transparent, that does actually serve the end user and not just enrich the banking system, who arguably are the parasites on the back of the productive animal.
Build custom industrial machines.
So the costs
in an underground bunker.
I was with real. Do whatever it takes to protect what I've built. It's never just about bunker.
Paradise, exclusively on Disney+.